We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us, talking legal issues and high-profile cases here in Middle Tennessee with News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo. Always good to have him on. Every time he comes on, I learn something from him. He's terrific. And we've got the lines open, so we've touched on a few of the cases. Some other ones I'll bring up, but I want to go to some of the folks that waited through the break, and we'll start off with Martin. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning to you guys. Good
Hey
morning,
there.
attorney.
Good morning.
I would like to ask, first of all, to the attorney, that is there some stuff going on? It seems to be some political mojo in the rumor mill that our governor could be into some unethical dealings. And as far as Glenn Cassida, does he face any more criminal dealings as well? And if you guys could clarify, when he stepped down in August, when he decided on his own terms to step down and take a pension that I'm paying for the rest of his life, even though he did things that I think were quite racist, did he step down just from the speaker position, or is he completely out of the House completely, or does he still have a seat on the floor?
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, it's a little off base on this in terms of there's nothing criminal with either one of them right now. Yet. As far as the governor, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything.
I think there was some allegation about, when they were trying to get votes on school vouchers, that maybe someone from the administration offered a legislator a promotion in the National Guard. Okay,
maybe something like that.
And of course, the governor's completely denied that emphatically.
Right.
And as it pertains to Cassida and the criminal stuff, I mean, there could very well be. I know there was previously a federal investigation over some issues, but federal investigations a lot of time you aren't privy to. Okay, so there may or may not be something going on with that, and he did just step away from the speaker position. He did not step away from his seat as a state rep in the Williamson County area.
He's still a state rep. It remains to be seen whether or not his constituents in the next election will re-elect him or if he's out. And with regard to anything criminal along those lines, Nick has some background on this because you've been a council person, you're politically involved. I know that, and you support various candidates, but I know our I-team has done some investigative pieces of late, kind of stretching out, looking at both, now the sitting Rutherford County Mayor Bill Ketron,
yes,
and raising some questions about Glenn Cassida in terms of how some of their campaign money was being spent. Now, they're looking at that, and I know there's certain guidelines on how you can and cannot spend your campaign money, and they're fairly loose. So you can spend that on a lot of different things. That's something being looked at, but as far as I know, there have been no criminal charges filed along those lines.
And I'd like to, applaud the chairman of the Tennessee Election Registry Finance, Tom Lawless, who, they just recently met and did decide and voted to commission an investigation on those two pieces. And a lot of times you don't see people from the same party being willing to investigate their own. So I think that was good for Tennessee politics.
Yeah.
There may be nothing there. Okay,
there may be, but at least don't look into it.
It's not so partisan. It does look like, that they stepped up and they're willing to investigate their own. So I think that's, that's +1 for politics in Tennessee.
Yeah, and a lot of that coming about because of the work of our I-team and Jennifer Krause.
Right.
Let's go next to our friend Joe. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Nick. I want to get back on the Gabby Newland case.
Sure.
The last I heard, this fool has now decided that he's going to seek the insanity, that he's got mental problems. So, I'm getting sick and tired of it. Every one of these cases pops up. They try to go back when they was a child or something, saying they've got mental problems. Everybody's got some kind of mental problems, probably. So I'm sick of hearing that. But that being said, on the DNA, there is certain chromosomes in DNA. It don't happen to very, very, very minute people, but there's a chromosome that's not present in DNA that can throw DNA completely off base. This fool up there could be one of them. So, DNA is a great thing to come along, but it still is not perfect.
Well, that's true. And Nick, I don't know, I know you're kind of a schooled in DNA, but, Timothy Madden's son apparently maybe was also at the game that night. Now, he was arrested in regard to some separate incidents after his dad was arrested, but never with connection to what happened to Gabby Doolin. But some have theorized, well, what if his son somehow was involved? Would you be able to tell the DNA difference between the father and son? Which I think ultimately you can, though they'd be very similar. And again, his son has not been charged in this case in any way, but it's been brought up because he was there that night. And well, just could the DNAs be intermingled? And do you know, they can differentiate between father and son, I believe, can't they?
You know, I think if you had the right kind of sample, I believe that you could, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, and I think it just depends on the sample as well. I mean, you know, some samples are obviously better than others.
Right.
But you do see a lot more of the mental health issues being raised, and I agree with Joe. I mean, we saw in Emmanuel Sampson, you know, they tried the Burnett Chapel shooter, right?
Yep.
There's no doubt who did it, but again, they were trying to get into, you know, his childhood, or maybe I think there was some bipolar issues there, and you know, the judge wasn't wanting to allow that because their own expert, the defense's own expert, testified that he did not suffer from any kind of mental illness that would rise to the level of an insanity defense. And I think it's real clear that for an insanity defense to work, I mean, you really have to be out there. And I mean seriously out there, not just, you know, schizophrenic, not bipolar, not psychotic. You know, I mean, you really have to be, you know, in a bad spot. But I do think that the General Assembly, who makes our laws, needs to review how we determine insanity, because we're learning more and more about mental health. And we're learning, and as we learn those kinds of things, just like with domestic violence, I mean, I think the law has to change a little bit. Not to say that we need to give people a hall pass or anything like that because, you know, they weren't taking, you know, Adderall or Ritalin, okay? And I'm not, but again, there are serious mental defects that could potentially have a bearing, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but I do think taking another look at it would not be bad given the current state of where we are and what we know about mental health.
I think they probably will, because it keeps getting brought up. I think you're right about that. Now, the interesting thing about it, and I'll say this, Joe, I know that that's a possibility, but I have not heard that Timothy Madden's attorney is going to go that way, and with one reason is because they may have other defense motions to go on. The thing about the example you just gave, be it Emmanuel Sampson in the church shooting or Travis Ranking in the Waffle House shooting, there is no doubt that those two guys did it. Now, Travis Ranking's still pending, but I'm sitting here telling you right now he did it. There's no question that he was the mass shooter at the Waffle House, okay? So when you know that, and it's all the chips are. What other defense do you have? Is my point on that.
Well,
I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, you're not going to be able to argue that he didn't do it. So in the absence of that, and I don't care if they want to argue insanity. I know, Joe, maybe it gets frustrating. First of all, I haven't seen anyone win on insanity. One, and two, well, one defense is as good as the other as far as I'm concerned when it comes up. But right in the absence, when you know for sure that they did it, and I know you still have to go through the process, but we know it. What other leg do they have to stand on? You know,
I don't think that there's much to stand on. I mean, the only thing that they could hope for if you're unsuccessful with an insanity defense and you're found to be competent by a trial court judge, the only thing that you can hope for is that you could have what's called maybe a diminished capacity defense, and that is you weren't able to formulate the requisite mental intent for the crime that you're charged with. So, you know, for example, first-degree murder is a premeditated, intentional murder of another. So if you didn't have the ability to form either premeditation or the intent, then maybe the jury would go down to a lesser offense. But again, a diminished capacity does not work like an insanity defense and just get you completely, you know, out of trouble, for lack of a better term. It would just kind of lend itself to the jury to look at the lesser included offenses and probably arrive at a conviction on that.
Can you think of a time where the insanity or diminished capacity worked recently?
Well, I mean, you saw with Travis Rankin, okay? Judge Fishburne, you know, said, look, at this point, he's not competent, okay? And so he sent him, you know, to an institution,
Middle Tennessee Mental Health,
to try to get his, you know, competency level up and to get him medicated and to get him at a therapeutic level to where he was competent to assist in his own defense. Now, you can only imagine to the victims that day, that was a real big blow when you think this guy's getting out of it. But again, we saw that just because you're not competent today doesn't mean that your condition cannot and will not improve. And that's what we saw.
Okay. And is it of your opinion, if for some reason someone commits a horrible crime like the Waffle House one and was somehow acquitted under the insanity defense, that does not, however, mean they walk out free, does it? I mean, that meaning, okay, so all right, you're maybe not going to prison, but we've determined you're crazy, you just killed people, so you're still a big danger whether you're crazy or not. We're not letting you go. I mean, that's part of it, isn't it?
Well, if you are not found competent to stand trial or something like this, they just don't let you walk out of the jail. Okay, there's a big, long statute, and it's very long, and it's very detailed on what options that you have. But I mean, you will be institutionalized, and then, like we saw with Ranking, you know, if it improves, then maybe you can be tried. If not, you know, you will will be institutionalized for a very long time. And so these people aren't just let out of jail. But again, the conviction would be overturned if we didn't do that, because if you're not competent to stand trial, then, I mean, they can't, the conviction won't stand. So this is, again, a way the legislature has come in and said, okay, this is how we're going to do this, but they do not get out of jail.
Okay,
like
so
that. It's different.
Exactly. All right, so here's the one case where I think there's a good chance that they're going to have a relatively strong argument that the person's insane. And that case is the one involving Michael Cummins in Sumner County, the man who's charged with the 8 murders, including slaughtering most of his family in the house, remember, where they found 6. And these are not shooting murders. These are, and you know, I mean, apparently, remember, the grandmother's the only one that survived. She can't really remember, from what I understand, but she's getting better, the details of it. But I mean, these were bludgeons and I mean, just horrible type, okay? At this level of where it went to, and then I remember seeing him at the preliminary hearing after he was captured, of course, and just the way he sat there, and a lot of people might say it's an act, but he had this twitch, and he's sitting there leaning, and the nature of the crimes and the way he did it are just so beyond the pale that, you know, he's going to get an evaluation and his background, and there's no doubt he did it. And so I believe that that's going to be a strong argument there, and it will not surprise me if the district attorney in that county chooses not to seek the death penalty as well.
Well, may not. Yeah, you can't seek the death penalty on somebody who's, you know, not.
But you know what I mean? Some people might be listening and say, "Well, Nick, just because it was as horrible as it was doesn't mean he's crazy." And I agree with you on this, but I just think this is the avenue they're going to seek. And based on just what I watched and observed at his preliminary hearing, and what I've heard about the nature of the crimes and how he went about committing them, and what he did after the fact, just tells me this guy is completely out there. And I'm not saying to forgive him for it. He's a monster. But that he was not cold and calculating, and I'm just going to go. No, this guy was out of his head.
Well, so was Jeffrey Dahmer and BTK, but they were found to be competent. Okay, they did some crazy things.
No,
right? But I think what it underscores is we don't know anything about his competency level now.
No, we don't.
But what we do know is what we saw on TV and what the image that he is giving off, and that could play into a jury. Even if he was found competent to stand trial, they're going to look at him and think something's not right. Just like the Aurora, Colorado shooter. Okay, he has a bit of that tick going on in the courtroom, and a crazed look in his eye. But again, without knowing anything, these are just secondary observations that we're making as lay people. But apparently that really did go. Okay. And I would agree. I mean,
lay people are jurors.
That's exactly
you're right. It can be an input. And look, maybe I'm naive, and some people are going to say, oh, these guys are putting on a great act, they're great actors. No, most of these guys are meatheads, okay, with IQs of a grapefruit, and they're not sitting there coming up with some elaborate plan to deceive everyone and trick the doctors by pretending to be crazy in a lot of these cases. They're not going to be able to pull that off. And I believe, you know, just looking at this case, based on what you just said, it appears as though that's probably going to be the direction they're going. I'm not saying he's going to win, but the Michael Cummins case, of all of them that we're talking about, I think he seems the most likely to seek the crazy avenue and maybe have a chance at success. It's just an opinion. We'll take a break on that note. When we come back, 737-7587 is the number. If you have questions or comments, give us a call. We're going to touch bases on some new developments on 2 cases that I know many of you have followed, the Holly Bobo case, as well as, he mentioned it a moment ago, Joe Clyde Daniels, the latest on that, and the little boy's search for his remains. We'll be back right after this.